sorry, 8 months, so I must address that. So, this following video that you're gonna see is the first big stuff that I am going to cover and marks this channel's return. Alright guys, so the first review that I'm gonna make is the review of The Last of Us. Now, what I'm talking about here is The Last of Us, the TV series adaptation, not the video games. Yes, I have played 2 of the video games, The Last of Us Part 1 and Part 2. So I understand what I'm going for here, what I'm going into. I understand the lore, I understand the genre, and I understand the execution from the video games. So, this show has wrapped up, alright? And I'm going to talk about all the episodes without spoiling some specific details and tell you what I liked and what I didn't like, alright? Because there are a lot of things that I liked about the show, but there are some little things that I wish they would change in the second season, because they have confirmed the second season and the 3rd season, alright guys? So this stuff is big. Now, to start off with the cast, Joel Miller is now played by Pedro Pascal, and Bella Ramsey played Ellie Williams. Now, at first, I didn't really click on Bella Ramsey's Ellie, but I'm getting into that later. First, let's talk about Joel Miller. Pedro Pascal as Joel Miller. You know, Pedro Pascal, a version of Miller, is still a brooding loner, but he's a little bit vulnerable, and that's what I like about him. The vulnerable side of Joel Miller. And Pedro Pascal was able to capture the vulnerable sides of Joel Miller perfectly. From the first episode, when you see the flashback for when the outbreak happened, you really start to feel this guy's emotion instantly, guys, instantly. And I really dig into that. I really love that aspect. Pedro Pascal's Joel is amazing. And now let's move on to Bella Ramsey's Ellie. At first, I didn't really click with the version of Ellie here, but as far as the show goes on, I'm really starting to feel, the comedic relief that she's delivering with this role. Because that's what you need, right? In this apocalyptic show, you really need that levity with that character. And that sense is brought by Bella Ramsey's Ellie here. And now, let's talk about the chemistry between 2 of these characters. Well, the first episode until the 4th episode, I didn't really feel they're connected. But when the show goes on from 5 to 9, because this is a 9-episode miniseries, I'm really starting to feel their connection, their boundary. They are talking to each other, they're laughing at each other, they're mocking at each other, but you can really see the father-daughter dynamic that they are going to show in the show. And the father and daughter dynamic is present, front and center in the show, and that's what I liked about the show. All of the dynamics from the other characters like Joel and Tommy, Joel's brother, they're really present here, and I really like their characterization. So, my first point was that the characters are done right in the show. The second thing that I liked about the show was the atmosphere. The atmosphere of the post-apocalyptic city is really present here. But there are some tiny little changes that I didn't like. In the games, the infected aspects are pretty much present. In the show, their presence are limited by screen time, and also the presence wasn't really that terrifying. the clickers were really terrifying in the video games, but the clickers here, they're not always as terrifying, and they are not really present on screen all the time. I'm not saying all episodes has to deal with the infected in the show. And I understand the point, because this is a show, you gotta trim some stuff down and decide on focusing on the characterization and relationships between the characters, because that are also important. But sometimes I feel the infected aspects weren't really highlighted enough in this show. But with all that said, I really do like the action scenes, although there are not many, but there are 3 of action scenes that I liked in the show a lot. The first one is the first clicker encounter in episode 2. That clickers are terrifying. And then here comes the full bloater ambush in episode 5, which I really like. This scene captures that desperation, captures that action gameplay feeling that you get from the video games. And the third one is the hospital ambush in episode 9. I really like that. I really like that they finally show us a hint of Joel's past in this scene. How dangerous he was in his prime. Because this is no Joel. But through this scene, you can really see a tiny little bit of him in his prime. How brutal he is, how dangerous he is, and how emotional he is. I really like the scene where he murders all of these nurses and doctors just to save Ellie. I really like that scene. And what I really like the most about the scene is the music, taking the front and center to really hit the emotional aspect of Joel's character's arc in this whole series. It all concluded on that scene. Now, I'm going to get back on the action a little bit, alright? Because I wish there were more infected spread out through all of these 9 episodes, because you realize when you're watching an episode and sometimes the episode doesn't have a single infected, guys, and that does seem wrong to me. It's wrong, because this is a show titled The Last of Us, and sometimes what they're focusing here is on the human aspect. But overall, guys, I really do like the story and the atmosphere, because you really need to understand the characters that are in the show. Even some of the characters that are present only in one episode has a great performance, alright? And I'm hoping for the season 2 and 3, they're going to increase the amount of the infected, because with that amount increased, you can increase the tension of the action sequences. And also, the action sequences in this season felt really safe and holding back on that, big climactic action set pieces, like Joel falling from the university building on the video games. That wasn't present here, alright? And some of that big scale action sequences were not present in here at all, But I do like what they're trying to do with the story here. I really felt that the story was the most important and effective aspect of the show, and I really like that. But from season 2, you have to increase that action aspect to increase our enjoyment of the show. I wasn't pumping to see this show week to week, but I really still like it, guys. I think this is a near perfect adaptation. I think the engagement part was the action and the story. Even though the action weren't much, but I think they should improve on that on season 2. But overall, guys,